on this project. Also on the call, we have Christine Hanna, the DOT project manager, Aaron Bubb, our consultant project manager, and Leanne Buchlick from the village wasn't able to join us tonight, but is part of our project team and can be reached directly if you have questions for her. So just a few housekeeping things before we get started. A reminder to please keep your phones or microphones muted. If you have Teams or you're joining through a browser, that's in the upper right-hand corner, that little microphone icon. We ask that you please be respectful of others and, of course, use appropriate language. We also ask that you hold your questions until the end. Aaron's going to give about a 15 to 20-minute presentation first. If you'd like to submit a question via the chat box, you may do so at any time. Otherwise, after the presentation, we'll open up the meeting to questions. In order to keep some kind of order and make sure everyone gets a chance, we'll ask you to use the hand raise function on Teams. It's in the upper right corner of your screen. It looks like a little smiley face with a hand. If you're joining via a browser and not via the Teams app, you may need to click on the 3 dots, and then you'll see a raise hand function in the drop-down menu. We'll call on people one at a time who have their hand raised, ask you to unmute so you can ask your question, and then please remember to mute again. For the purpose of this meeting, out of respect for other attendees' time, please try to keep the questions more general, project-based things that would apply to more than just you or your property. If you have specific questions about your property, we'd be happy to answer those offline, just so we don't have to have everyone in on that conversation. And all of the project team's contact information will be available a couple times throughout the presentation, so we'll make sure you have that. This meeting technically runs from 5 to 7 p.m., but the same exact presentation is going to be given again at 6 p.m., so there's no need to stay the entire 2 hours. We're likely going to have a little bit of downtime in between presentations if the time isn't filled, and then we'll just get started again at 6. So with all of that, I'm going to hand it over to Aaron Bubb, our consultant project manager, to walk us through the project. Aaron?
Thanks, Lindsay. Good afternoon. Like Lindsay said, my name is Aaron Bubb. I'm the project manager with Kapoor & Associates. Our agenda includes the project background and going through the need of the project, a review of existing conditions, looking at the proposed alternatives, as well as the project schedule, and then answering any questions that there might be. So looking at the project, it's located on Lake Drive in the village of Shorewood. The limits are Edgewood Avenue on the south end, and that extends north to Kensington Boulevard for approximately 1.3 miles. The posted speed limit is 30 miles an hour, and traffic in the corridor north of Kensington is, north of Edgewood is approximately 14,600 vehicles a day, and south of Kensington, it's just over 11,000 vehicles a day. The purpose and need for the project is to address failing pavement condition. The original pavement was installed in 1952, as well as upgrading existing municipal underground facilities. At this stage, we also need to consider bike and pedestrian accommodations. So the proposed improvements include a pavement construction. This means we are removing the existing pavement as well as the base below it, replacing curb and gutter, and improving curb ramps. This is where the sidewalk meets the curb and gutter at side road intersections. We need to make sure that's ADA compliant, and we'll be replacing combined sewer and water main in the project corridor for the village of Shorewood. So looking at the base construction cost estimate, this would be for replacing the project within its current footprint and not expanding the roadway. The base construction cost estimate is a range of $7 million to $7.7 million. Of that, the driving lanes are funded by federal and state funds, 80% federal funds and 20% state funds. And the parking lanes, though, the cost share for that would be 80% federal funds, 5% state funds, and 15% Village of Shorewood funds. So there's only one alternative that affects the village's cost share, and I'll point that out when we discuss the alternatives and the options in more detail. Before we look at the proposed alternatives, this corridor is State Highway 32. So there's standards that apply for bicycles and pedestrian accommodations, as well as driving lane and parking lane widths. So we will be following the Wisconsin Department of Transportation's Facilities Development Manual, which has desirable and minimum standards for roadways. And you'll see alternatives that were developed for both of these. but we are required to show bicycle accommodations. And some of these alternatives do affect on-street parking and existing terrace trees, which are located in the green space between the back of curb and the front of sidewalk. Although there is a risk to these existing trees with all construction alternatives, the village arborist believes that widening the roadway will have a significant or negative impact on these existing terrace trees because their roots likely extend to the back curb. And on other Village of Shorewood projects where the curbs have been moved out, the arborist has seen that some trees do decline quickly, while others may slowly decline over a period of 5 to 10 years. Now, as a designer, we may deviate from the desirable standards with strong public output, as well as consideration to impacts such as trees and parking, as well as parkland. We have Atwater Park located in the project, and historic districts. There's 2 residential historic districts within the project limits. So in summary, we need to balance the federal and state standards with the need of the local community and the residents. And like Lindsay said, we're here to get your input. So the next slide shows an overview of the corridor. And basically, we see the corridor falling into 3 segments. There's the south segment, which would go from Edgewood up to about Shorewood Boulevard. Then there's the Capitol Drive intersection segment, which would extend from about Shorewood Boulevard to Jarvis Street. And then the north segment, which would go from Jarvis up to Kensington Boulevard. If we take a look at the existing configuration for the south and north segments, what we'll see is the existing roadway measures 44 feet from face of curb to face of curb. And the existing roadway has a 1 11-foot driving lane going northbound and 1 11-foot driving lane going southbound. On the outside, there is an 11-foot lane, and this lane is currently being used for parking as well as bike use on each side of the roadway. And then here's our terrace areas for the trees we just discussed on each side of the roadway, as well as existing sidewalk. If we look at the Capitol Drive segment, for the most part, this roadway segment features a 4-lane segment where there's 2 11-foot driving lanes going northbound and 2 11-foot driving lanes going southbound. However, bicycles are forced to share the lane with live traffic under this scenario. So the proposed alternatives were developed for each of these 3 segments. We'll begin with the north and south segments. So the south segment, again, going from Edgewood Avenue up to Shorewood Boulevard, and the north segment from Jarvis Street up to Kensington Boulevard. And there's 3 alternatives for these segments. First alternative I want to discuss is called the 5-foot bike lane. This alternative measures 44 feet from face of curb to face of curb, just like the existing roadway. There would be 1 11-foot driving lane going northbound and 1 11-foot driving lane going southbound. In addition to a 2-foot gutter, there would be a 5-foot dedicated bike lane in each direction, southbound as well as northbound. And then under this alternative, there's an 8-foot parking lane. The alternative on the screen shows it on the east side of the roadway. That's because Atwater Park is located on the east side of the roadway. So if that would possibly reduce mid-block crossings of people trying to get to Atwater Park. The other thing that this allows is with parking restrictions in the PM hours, it allows when northbound vehicles are trying to make a left turn onto the 13 side roads, through vehicles could pass those turning vehicles using the parking lane with those parking restrictions. That said, the parking lane could also be placed on the west side of the roadway instead of the east side, and this would just rotate this alternative 180 degrees. At the specifics for the 5-foot bike lane alternative, the road width is 44 feet from face of curb to face of curb. There is no widening with this alternative. However, there is only one side of parking. There are dedicated 5-foot bike lanes in each direction. This is considered a desirable bike accommodation per WISDOT. When we're looking back at the standards when we started, This is considered desirable. Since we're not widening, there would be fewer potential tree impacts, and this fits within the base construction cost estimate that I mentioned earlier of $7 to $7.7 million. So this is the 5-foot bike lane alternative for the north and south segments. Moving on to the 12-foot shared parking bike lane alternative. This typical section measures 46 feet from face of curb to face of curb. There's one 11-foot driving lane going northbound and one 11-foot driving lane going southbound. In this scenario, the outside lane is widened 1 foot, and the outside lane becomes 12 feet for a shared parking and bike lane on both sides of the roadway. Looking at the considerations of the 12-foot shared parking bike lane alternative, again, the road width is 46 feet. This is widening of about 1 foot on each side of the roadway. It does allow parking to remain on the east and west sides of the roadway. Bikes would share a 12-foot parking lane. This is considered the minimum for parking and bikes in a constrained environment. This is when we have parks such as Atwater Park as well as historic resources in the corridor. However, with the widening of 1 foot on each side, there would be potential greater impacts to those existing trees. And with the widening of the parking lane, the added cost for that would be approximately $130,000 to $190,000 in addition to the base construction cost estimate. And because this widening is happening in the parking lane, this is the one alternative that affects the village's cost share and would increase their participation in 15% of these costs. So this is the 12-foot shared parking bike lane alternative. Moving on to the replace in kind alternative, this is if we just pull out the pavement and put it back exactly the way it is. So again, that measures 44 feet from face of curb to face of curb. There's one 11-foot driving lane going northbound, one 11-foot driving lane going southbound. Again, the outside lanes are 11 feet wide, and that's for parking and bike use as it is today. Looking at the specifics of the replace in kind alternative, again, 44 feet from face of curb to face of curb. No widening, parking would be on the east and west sides. Bikes do share 11-foot parking lane. This does not provide a bike accommodation per WISDOT. However, there would be fewer potential tree impacts because we're not widening, and this does fit within the base construction cost estimate that we mentioned earlier. Moving on to the Capitol Drive intersection and those alternatives. Again, this is from Shorewood Boulevard to approximately Jarvis Street. And we have 4 alternatives for this segment of the roadway. We'll start with a 5-foot bike lane alternative. This section measures 58 feet from face of curb to face of curb. And there would be 2 11-foot driving lanes going northbound and 2 11-foot driving lanes going southbound. The outside lanes would have a 2-foot gutter and a dedicated 5-foot bike lane for southbound as well as northbound. And the widening occurs in the terrace area here. So trees are impacted for sure with this widening. The existing sidewalk would remain for the most part. So looking at considerations for the 5-foot bike lane, again, this is from Capitol at the Capitol Drive intersection. The road width is 58 feet. The widening is about 7 feet on each side of the roadway. The width of the outside driving lanes is 11 feet. This meets the WISDOT standard for the amount of traffic we have as well as truck traffic. So that outside lane should be 11 feet per their standards. It does have dedicated 5-foot bike lanes, which is considered a desirable bike accommodation per WISDOT. However, there are impacts to the trees as well as the traffic signals located at Capitol Drive intersection. So with the signals, this would add approximately $420,000 to $540,000 to the base construction cost estimate. This is for the 5-foot bike lane alternative at the Capitol Drive intersection. The next alternative would be a 4-foot bike lane at the Capitol Drive intersection. It measures 52 feet from face of curb to face of curb. There's two 11-foot driving lanes going northbound and two 11-foot driving lanes going southbound. And there would be dedicated 4-foot bike lane southbound as well as in the northbound direction. Looking at the specifics of the 4-foot bike lane at Capitol, road width would be 52 feet. That's widening of about 4 feet on each side of the roadway. The width of the outside driving lane is 11 feet. That meets standards. It has dedicated 4-foot bike lanes, which is considered a bike accommodation per WISDOT. However, there's going to be impacts to trees as well as traffic signals, and this adds approximately $290,000 to $350,000 to the base construction cost estimate. Again, these are estimated numbers for comparison. Next alternative would be the 12-foot shared driving bike lane alternative. This is at Capitol. This measures 46 feet from face of curb to face of curb. Here there's one 11-foot driving lane going northbound and one 11-foot driving lane going southbound. There's also a 12-foot shared lane for bikes and vehicles going northbound, and similarly a shared 12-foot driving bike lane going southbound. But again, bikes are sharing that lane with live traffic. Looking at the specifics of the 12-foot shared driving bike lane alternative, the road width is 46 feet. This is about 1 foot of widening on each side of the roadway. Here, the effective width of the outside driving lane is 11 feet. And what WISDOT has seen is that when the curb is right there on the lane, vehicles tend to stay at least 1 foot off of that lane. So effectively, that reduces that outside driving lane width to 11 feet. That still meets the standards for the driving lane. So bikes do share this 12-foot area though. However, it does not provide a bike accommodation per WISDOT. With the widening, there are greater potential tree impacts. However, there would be no traffic signal impacts. This would add about $30,000 to $50,000 to the base construction cost estimate. Again, this is the 12-foot shared driving bike lane at the Capitol Drive intersection. Finally, we have the replace in kind alternative. Again, this is if we take out what's there and put it back exactly the way it is. This measures 44 feet from face of curb to face of curb. There's one 11-foot driving lane going northbound, one 11-foot driving lane going southbound. Just like today, there's an 11-foot shared lane on the outside that bicycles need to share with traffic. One of those lanes going northbound, same thing southbound. Looking at the specifics of this alternative, this is the replace in kind at Capitol. Road width is 44 feet. There's no widening. However, the effective width of the outside driving lane would only be 10 feet. This does not meet the WISDOT standard. Bikes would be sharing an 11-foot driving lane, which does not provide a bike accommodation. It fits within the existing footprint, so there would be fewer potential tree impacts, no traffic signal impacts, and it does fit within the base construction cost estimate we discussed earlier. So before finishing, I want you to know we can mix and match these alternatives. For example, if it's determined that the appropriate alternative for the south segment is the 5-foot bike lane, that doesn't mean it's an appropriate alternative for the Capitol Drive segment or the north segment. So these alternatives can be combined or blended to complete the full corridor. We'll also be coordinating with the City of Milwaukee on the south end of the project and the Village of Whitefish Bay on the north end of the project to transition our pavement marking with projects in the neighboring communities. Most of the existing sidewalk will remain in place. However, there will be some minor sidewalk replacements at curb ramps. This is locations where the sidewalk meets the existing curb and gutter at intersections. These curb ramps would be replaced to make sure they're ADA compliant. With the sewer and water work, there may need to be connections to laterals to the individual properties. If that's the case, there may need to be some spot locations where sidewalk would be replaced for the lateral work. And then with the widening alternatives, There could be some sidewalk that needs to be replaced. In this case, we're showing that at Atwater Park, where the roadway is expanded really close to the existing sidewalk. As far as the sewer and water goes, there's about 2,700 lineal feet of combined sewer that would be installed south of Capitol Drive and 6,600 feet of water main throughout the project corridor that will be replaced. In addition, the village will replace the lighting. Whether the street lighting is impacted by widening or not, the village would like to install new wire and conduit, new poles with LED luminaires to be more efficient. As far as right-of-way goes, there's no relocations on the project. However, there could be some small strip takings or grading easements required for the sidewalk and curb ramp work that we just discussed on the previous slide. And other considerations that the village would like the project team to look at would be curb bump outs. This would be at intersections to shorten crossing distances for pedestrians, also serve as a traffic calming option. And then ADA on-street parking, likely near Atwater Park. So these will be options that the project team will review as the design progresses. There's several ways to view the exhibits. Typical sections are to be posted at Village Hall and the library. There's also printed plan views of these alternatives that will be at Village Hall. But the best place to get all this information is from the project website. The link is on the screen. However, you can also scan the QR code with your phone. So I'll leave this up for a second. If you want to get your phones out, it will take you to the project website. We'll upload a recording of this meeting presentation, both the 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock versions. Like Lindsay said, they'll be the same. We'll have those recordings uploaded to the website. We'll also have a PDF of this PowerPoint posted there. There'll be a PDF of the typical sections that we just looked at for the north, south, and Capitol Drive segments. And there'll be, with that, there'll be a PDF that shows the different layouts for these alternatives, plan view layouts. So this will allow residents to be able to find their property and zoom in and see the various layouts. It'll be like you're flying a helicopter over and like looking down on the corridor. So that'll be very helpful. Moving on to the project schedule. The field survey was collected by Kapoor in fall of 2020. We're developing the current alternatives. And as we refine our design, there'll be additional public meetings anticipated in the future, 2023 and 2024. The environmental document is a CEC, a categorical exclusion checklist. This is planned for late 2021. A 60% plan would be due in 2022. The final plans for construction would be due in May of 2024, and construction is planned for 2026. The steps for selecting the proposed or preferred alternative include the following steps here listed on the screen. So first, we're going to develop the purpose and need for the project. We talked about that at the start. It's replacing the failing pavement and upgrading municipal sewer and water. We'll develop alternatives that meet the purpose and need. We'll assess the alternatives and their impacts and gather input from the public. So that's where we're at right here. From there, we would identify a preferred alternative and document that in the CEC. Selection will need to strongly consider bicycles and pedestrian accommodations, impacts to trees, parking, historic resources, and Atwater Park, costs, as well as public input. As I stated at the beginning, we're here to get feedback. We want to hear what you like, what you don't like. It's not a vote though. We're looking for general and specific comments, and there's several ways to do that. If you go to the website, you'll see a comment form there. There'll be a link. It also has hyperlinks on the form, so it can be emailed to project contacts. You can also send it through the U.S. Postal Service. There's also a link to an online survey on the website. The initial screen will look like this. And there's about 8 questions to answer. Should take about 5 to 10 minutes to complete that, get some additional feedback on the project. Finally, you can ask a question via Teams, raise your hand, and Lindsay and I can call on you, or type a chat, a comment in the chat window. After reviewing the materials, if you'd like to discuss a specific parcel or the project in general, please reach out to us. Our contact information is on the screen. And on behalf of the project team, we'd like to thank you for your participation in this project. Before I open it up to any questions from attendees, I do want to see if there's any representatives or officials from the Village of Shorewood that would like to weigh in on the alternatives. Again, anyone from the Village of Shorewood, if you'd care to weigh in.
Aaron, it looks like we have Trustee Bockhorst. I believe that is listed under T, who wants to say something in the chat.
Okay. Can we unmute the trustee? I think you'll need to unmute yourself, trustee.
Aaron, I think it's possible that you might need to unmute.
Yeah, I don't seem to have that option. Joe, if you're on the line, I'm unable to unmute.
I know we muted everyone at the beginning of the call, so I wonder if it's kind of a blanket mute that's happening right now. Just hang in there, everyone. We'll figure this out.
I disabled the microphones, and I'm re-enabling them.
Sounds good.
Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Okay, I now can, Aaron. Something happened there.
I think I'm here now, right?
Yes, now we can talk and say stuff, so. All right.
Okay. Fantastic.
Okay, now everybody can talk. Go ahead.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the presentation. So a couple of questions, and I saw in your preferred alternatives and in the whole process of all of this, what the one piece, well, there are a few things that I feel are missing. One was the 7-0 vote by the former Village Board of Trustees regarding our preferred situation, and maybe I missed that, forgive me. So I'm wondering what kind of communication and how much input from that decision you used in this situation.
Okay, Aaron, let me answer that, please.
So
I'm sorry, I missed your name.
Tammy Backhorse. I can't figure out how to change it on here. Forgive me.
Okay.
And
All right, so-
and this is Christine Hanna, the WIS project manager, is jumping in here. Just so.
Right. That's what I
sorry.
figured.
Thanks,
Okay.
Erin. I'm sorry, I failed to introduce myself. My name is Christine Hanna. I'm the DOT project manager for this specific project. Hence, what Erin just presented, we at the DOT, we want to ensure that we are presenting on swayed alternatives. We cannot put clearly that this is the village preferences or this is what the village board are voting for. This is where Rebecca or Leanne or yourself can come in and say, this is what we voted for during the meeting, and this is where the village would like to proceed
Okay,
with that.
then I'll stop you there. We voted for the option of just redoing, I forget what you called it before.
The replace in kind.
Correct, and it's no cost to the taxpayer. We were comfortable with a smaller bike lane. I understand that you said before that the Wisconsin, you said bike lane, I forget the exact nomenclature that you used, but it was Wisconsin DOT. Basically, what I'm understanding by that is your definition of a bike lane. But 7 members of the Village Board of Trustees were, and this is before this last spring election. Okay, so now we have 3 new members, but we're completely comfortable with the no cost, with keeping the situation the way it is. We spent a lot of time and money and a lot of public input on getting us to where we are as far as Lake Drive, redoing Lake Drive. And we've also received a lot of praise from that. And I'm not trying to be confrontational here, but I'm trying to be transparent. And I understand that there's probably at least 1 or 2, if not more, village board members here. So what I'm hearing from you then, Christine, is that discussion, that piece was not put in that sequence of events here. But I just want everyone on this call to understand that the Village Board of Trustees analyzed. We had the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. We had presentations. We had we had public information meetings. We had, and many people in the village are aware of this, that we have discussed this. And I'm a little shocked that these alternatives are being brought forward. I'm not shocked at all. I understand the whole situation with the different jurisdictions and governmental bodies, but yeah, it was a 7-0 vote. And now we have a new board. We have 3 new members. So, but again, I'm not sure really how much say we have in this ultimately, since we gave the Wisconsin Department of Transportation direction, and now we're getting this as if that never happened.
So Tammy, let me just respond from what I know, and I'm not going to really totally talk or speak on behalf of the individual you have spoken with. We have federal funding in this project. And in order for us to keep qualifying for those federal funding, we have to follow certain processes and certain guidelines in order for us to still qualify for these funds. This project is 80-20 funds, 80 federal and 20 state. There are some non-participating costs for the village for the parking lanes. Okay, so, but I don't want to go into details, but again, these are processes that we have to follow in order for us to still to abide and follow the direction of the federal government.
Okay, Christine, you've answered my question. So let me just interrupt you here. So what I'm hearing is these are check boxes that must be checked in order for that 80-20, for the funding to exist. All right, so I think the rest of the questions I'll ask for the village manager. I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have other question in that regard before we move forward?
And we did want to give the village of Shorewood an opportunity to state their opinion. So that's why we're opening it up to elected officials first.
Okay, go for it.
We do have lots of other hands up, Erin, if you want to start calling on people.
Sure, I'll just start at the top then with Renee, and we'll work our way down the list.
Yeah, hello, Aaron. I'm Renee Burkhardt. I live in North Lake Drive. I just heard about the whole proposal just this week, and I'm a little bit surprised to hear plans about a 4-lane layout, then plus with the alternatives with bike lanes. To be quite honest, I mean, I've been living there for 11 years. on North Lake Drive, I've never seen that the traffic was this bad that would require actually a 2-lane per side. But on the other hand, the proposal that's out there with a shared lane bicycle cars, there are a lot of kids, a lot of smaller children riding their bikes as well. I think this is a very dangerous proposal because it is calling for trouble. Otherwise, I'm totally fine with a bike lane on both sides because we see a lot of bicycle riders on both sides of the street. But I don't understand why it has to be a 4-way lane. So 2 car lanes on each side, then plus a bicycle line. I simply don't see the need as somebody who has been living there for a long time, because the traffic outcome is only in morning traffic and afternoon traffic, late afternoon traffic. And this lasts probably for 45 minutes, 50 minutes at max. I have never seen terrible traffic on the street, which would require actually to open that up and double up the lanes.
Yes, so thank you for your comment there, Renee. I just want to clarify, the 4 lanes are just within the footprint of the Capitol Drive intersection. So that's where we have 4 lanes today. So there's 2 lanes going northbound that allow for a left turn lane at Capitol, and then there's the through lane, which then drops just north of Capitol. So that would be similar to what's proposed, and that'll be shown on the layouts on the website. And then southbound, south of Jarvis to about Shorewood Boulevard, there are 2 southbound lanes. So that is consistent with what's there today. The proposal is not to add more lanes than what's there today. So the alternatives at Capitol that show 4 lanes, it's just 4 lanes, 2 in each direction, where there are 2 in each direction today.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I totally misunderstood that. So it's only between Capitol and Jarvis.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. And that's because of the PM and AM traffic that you talked about. So.
Okay. So then let me just one thing to that, because I'm living in exactly on this section on the west side. And it is exactly, no, on the east side, it's exactly this section. I have been calling the police last weekend 12 times because of parking violations. It is almost impossible for me to get out of my driveway. And this is no difference with the other neighbors that I have north and south of me. So I can't even imagine if there are 2 car lanes, how I will be able to get out of this, out of my driveway.
Right. So depending on where you live today, I believe you said on the east side, and we're happy to meet with you one-on-one to look at specifics, but there's no added lanes from what's there today. So if you have 2 lanes in that section today, it'll remain 2 lanes. If you have, I know there is a small section just south of Jarvis that only has 1 lane. That would remain one lane with, and the alternatives in there would match what's shown in the north segment, the 3 alternatives there. So
yeah, but if I just may interrupt you here, I mean, I'm also driving every day, and if I'm coming from south on North Lake Drive, I'm approaching Capitol. This part is 2-lane because of the turnaround opportunity going left on Capitol. But right after that, this is only 1 lane. The other lane is completely used for parking.
Correct. So what I'm saying is just north of Capitol to Jarvis, that little northbound section there would fall into the alternatives for the north segment. So
Aaron, sorry to interrupt. Can you bring that slide so it would be easy to point to it versus just talking?
Sure. Hang on a second. Let me just try to share that alternative here. That's a great point, Christine. Okay, so this is Shorewood to Jarvis. So if we look at like the 5-foot bike lane, for example, and zoom in here, that second northbound lane does end just north of the intersection like it is today. So there is one lane there and the 2 lanes southbound.
Okay, I see that now. So
So-
this would mean there is no more parking. This would be a bike lane, a dedicated bike lane.
Well, this is one of the alternatives. So that's why we shared the link to the website, which has these alternatives there. So the one we just looked at was the 5-foot bike lane, and then there's other alternatives though that do allow parking there.
Aaron, can I suggest we maybe schedule a call with Renee or a visit to his property just so we can have
Sure.
give everyone else an opportunity. We have, I think, 5 or 6 other hands up just for the sake of time.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a nice thing because we inquired, my neighbors and I inquired for years to do something about the parking situation because we can't get out of our driveways. And there is a lot of parking. Driveways are getting blocked by cars which are coming from outside. And it is a known danger that the village of Shorewood should know. If somebody is getting teed on this area, trying to leave their driveways, this is very, very dangerous. I mean, that is a known danger.
So Renee, if you can send an email to Aaron, myself, and Lindsay, whoever else you want to copy, with your name and full address, and then we'll try to schedule a time for us to meet with you and discuss further your concerns. That will be great.
Okay, who should I send the email to again?
You can send it to Aaron or myself.
Okay.
That's the first thing. Second thing.
And Aaron will go back and put the contact slide on the screen shortly after, if anybody else have any comments. So if you can just stay a little bit on, and we'll be able to share this at the end.
And Christine, I'm sorry
Yes.
to interrupt. I would also recommend that everyone who is planning on doing that also, especially if you agree with the village's decision, the village board's decision, to let us know and loop us in this, because it's, as we've seen, we haven't really been looped in, including in the card deck. And I know, Christine, you had mentioned that, one key element that's missing, and I hope that you put in for the 6 o'clock presentation, is that the village board unanimously voted for one alternative.
Yes, I fully understand. I believe Tammy is on the call, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I fully understand, Tammy, and I see where you're coming from. However, just I hope you understand, when that project came to me, I was not aware of all of this until I met with Rebecca and Leanne.
Right,
So-
but weren't you presenting at the meeting?
I was.
Yes, so you understood the vote. We gave you a 7-0 vote.
Yes, but it doesn't mean that we have to still be neutral when we present to the public.
Right, but this is the public within Shorewood for the most part. But I understand, but I know you're being neutral, but you still in your neutrality could neutrally state that the village board of trustees voted 7-0 for X. And I know you don't have to do that, but given that the majority of these people are my constituents here, I want them to know that that's what happened.
And we'll definitely reiterate that, Tammy.
Okay, we've got 7 or 8 other people with their hands up. So Aaron, if you want to just start calling on people.
Yeah, and
Let's try to get to some
thanks
of
for
these.
that. Renee, I put my email in the chat. Kathy S., I'll open it up to you. Thank you for your patience. You are muted.
Yeah.
Kathy is also on the board of trustees, so if it takes her a while, maybe you want to move to the next person and come back, and I can help her get unmuted.
Thank you. Going on to Adrian, is it?
Right. I'm Adrian's husband, Jeff. Am I unmuted and can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
thank you.
yes, we can.
So I won't get into specifics, but I'll get into just some generalizations here. This is a time where green trees are at a premium. Shorewood is the city or the city, I think it's that both signs in both directions say Shorewood is the village or the city of trees. So let's keep trees as a top priority and let's not injure them. Let's not put them at risk. Trees, not only in Shorewood, not only in Milwaukee, but in this country, green trees protect trees. That's a premium. Let's keep that in mind, top of the list. The second thing is bike lanes. I'm a cyclist. I can ride in a shared parking zone plus a half lane for cyclists plus a shared parking zone. If you start extending out the lanes for two cyclists, you're going to have three people riding abreast. It always happens. A cyclist only needs about 2 feet to be pretty safe. Sometimes they move out into the traffic a little bit, but then they move back in. If you start widening the lane, they're still going to be way out to the left. They always do that. If you look at cyclists, including good cyclists, novice cyclists, they always start to hang out to the left of their dedicated lane, and they're still near traffic. As you widen it, you're going to get two abreast. Two abreast is dangerous. So I think right now it's pretty safe the way it is. I'm surprised. We used to have a situation here where there were 2 lanes in each direction north of Jarvis, plus parking, and that was very dangerous. Now we've got a shared lane with a car that doesn't move. It's parked. There is so much space in that lane between shared parking plus the cyclist lane. There is huge amount of room, and really no cyclist should be going two abreast. We could have signs for that in this section here. It's dangerous to be doing two abreast in these sections. Then there's a bike path for people who are going north south into the city, and it's an excellent bike path.
Yeah, it's totally safe with no lights, no shared lanes.
So for the commuters who are traveling to work, and I travel to work on a bicycle, and I go down. I actually take I take the bike path. I travel from my house, which is on Lake Drive. I go down Jarvis, and I make my way to Capitol, which has a bike lane, and I get on the bike path at the bridge, and I travel to work almost every morning, 9 months out of the year. So, and there's just a time of the day when, as others have said, in the morning, about 7:15 to maybe 8:30, going south, and similarly, whatever that is, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it gets busy in the opposite direction. But I don't think we need to widen anything, and
Yeah,
I think
we'd
we
like
need to
it to be
preserve the
replaced.
trees.
Yeah, just keep it the way it is with the.
And other cyclists would have the same opinion.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, and would encourage you to fill out a comment form for that as well and send that to us, and don't forget the online survey as well.
Yeah,
definitely.
Thank you. Anthony, you have your hand up.
Hi, Aaron. My name is Anthony Lopresti. I also live on Lake Drive. So you mentioned that you're in the gathering input from public. How long is that period?
Well, we would not make any decisions for at least 30 days to let people be able to know about and be aware of all the exhibits. And then from there, we'll need to, take a look at what we had and sit down as a project team and evaluate again, according to, what the impacts are to, the trees, the parking, any historic concerns that there are in the park. as well as costs. We'll need to balance and weigh all the factors. So we're just in the early stages of gathering public input.
So from today, we have 30 days to provide comments or complete the survey.
Well, we'll take comments at any time, but I would encourage it to be done, the sooner the better. That said, we wouldn't be putting together recommendations until later this year for our environmental document. So there is time yet, and
Okay.
like we said, construction isn't until 2026 as well.
Sure, but if I heard correctly, you mentioned that the strong public feedback will help determine what option is chosen.
Mm-hmm.
So if we give you feedback in the next 30 days, are you expecting us to use the terminology in this presentation? If we fill out those surveys, should we say, I would like to see replace in kind?
Yes, definitely. If that's the option you prefer, I would state that.
All right. So I heard Tammy say earlier that the village already said replace in kind. If we use that same terminology, that should be pretty clear.
Correct. Replacing kind is one of the alternatives that we presented here. So that would be the name of that alternative.
And you'd still get the 80-20, you'd still get the federal dollars for that? Is that accurate?
It's already zoned, correct?
Christine, do you care to weigh in on that?
Yes, if we can document that we went through the NEPA process, which is getting the public input, documenting that we have vetted all possible alternatives, and this is a public requirement, and we still are able to deliver the project safely, we are able to do so. But hate to put you, Rich and Chris, on the spot here, but specifically you, Chris, do you have any comments to add in that regard? Chris Squires?
Christine, yeah, it's Chris. I guess
Can
could
you
you repeat the
introduce yourself,
question?
Chris, so everybody knows who you are? I know who you are.
Sure. Yeah, sorry. Thanks. Yeah, my name's Chris Squires. I'm with Wisconsin DOT. I'm the regional bike and pedestrian coordinator. And yeah, so I guess could you kind of repeat the question there, Christine, or what you're asking me to address?
So they wanted to confirm if the preferred alternative by the board members and the members of the public is to replace in kind. We are still going to receive the federal and the state funds for that, even if it's not what the preferred alternative for the state.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I don't know if I mean, some of that gets into kind of the NEPA process, environmental documentation process, which is not, my specific area of expertise. I mean, we do have requirements. The state has a complete streets law. There's also federal policies that come into play. I think public input certainly plays a part in that. There's some. I've heard comments. People talking about.
No, but Chris, will it be funded if we go with the what's it called, replace in kind option? I mean,
that's not a question I guess I can answer. It's not my decision. I think, as Christine said, there's a specific NEPA process, environmental process as to
so like an environmental impact statement. Are you guys going through an environmental impact analysis and statement, or I mean,
that is correct. That is
okay.
correct.
And when will that data be available? I'm sorry to keep jumping in, but I deal with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation on the daily with my day job, and I'm not saying anything bad about you guys. I'm just saying that it seems like we're talking around things. So when will that data be available?
Well, we don't, I don't know if Erin, if you have the schedule to when we are planning to complete that, but just Tammy, just note that we are not due for construction till 2026. So at least by the end of 2022, if not later, this is when that environmental document will be done, because we also have some historic impact, possibly if we're going to be moving, depending on the alternative. So we are vetting all of these issues in order for us to come up with informed decision how we're going to move forward. And when I wanted to get Chris' input, because like he said, he's a bike and pet coordinator, so I wanted you to hear his input. Regardless, if we go through the process, Tammy, and we'll be able to justify why we can, why we can't, we will move forward with the project development and delivery. So it's very early in the process to tell you yes or no. We're just going through the process yet.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. I would agree with everything you said. I guess, I would just kind of sum up, part of that process, in gathering public input, there per like the state and federal complete streets policies, there's some guidance about specific conditions for when, bike and pedestrian accommodations are omitted. I've heard people talk about the trees a lot. Certainly understand. I've heard people talk about bike usage out there, kids and adults and everything. There are some alternatives that were presented that can accommodate bikes without widening. So I guess I would encourage, everyone, when you submit your comments about what your preferred alternative is, to be as specific as you can as to, why you prefer an alternative or what impacts your concerns. If for example, one alternative has parking on one side as opposed to both. If you can provide comments that, why you prefer one alternative or replace in kind over the other, I think the more detail, the better when it comes to that. It would help Christine's team.
Chris, sorry to interrupt you, but what I've heard from a lot of people, including the village, is that they want the replace in kind. It sounds like you guys are not even considering that, the feedback you're receiving so far.
I believe that was one of the alternatives presented. I guess I'll leave it to Aaron and Christine to address that. Yeah.
Anthony, I believe you're the one who's asking the question. We are considering that. We're not eliminating it, but we, again, going through the environmental process by sharing with the public all possible alternatives. We yet have to hear from the rest of the group that I know there is a lot of people have their hands up. So this is, we are just collecting data. There is no determination yet.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Aspect. I'm sorry.
I understand. Thank you. I can give the next person a choice to speak.
I just want to jump in really quick in case anyone has just joined at 6 o'clock. We still have 6 or 7 people with their hands raised from the last presentation. So if you want to hang around for Q&A, we will get the presentation started once we get through these questions. So thank you for your patience.
Okay. All right. Lindsay and Aaron, let's go to the next person.
Dave D is next.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Hey, this is Dave Daly. I live on North Lake Drive in Shorewood near the Whitefish Bay border. I guess the first thing I would say, just because it was requested, absolutely agree with keeping it as is. I remember the process the village went through last time to talk about it, and it was very thoroughly vetted, and definitely don't want to widen it. It would damage trees, make the sidewalks less usable. But my real question is pedestrian safety. So Lake Drive on any day is difficult to cross for an adult, much less a kid. We have several grade school age kids that are scared to cross the road and wondering what the plans are for crosswalks.
So the plan view alternatives, and thanks for that question, Dave, do show crosswalk locations pretty much similar to what's there today. But as part of the project, I stated that we would be looking at ways to help pedestrians. One of those would potentially be curb bump outs to shorten crossing distances. I know the village had their own parking study done and recommended some rectangular rapid flash beacons to alert drivers prior to crossings. Another option would be high visibility crosswalks. So there's definitely some treatments that can be considered as we go through the design to calm traffic and bring attention to the pedestrians crossing the roadway.
And there's a very long stretch on Lake Drive that has no lights or stop signs. So the traffic gets extremely fast, and would absolutely encourage something like Whitefish Bay does. They have the beacons, they have the bump outs, signage, and it makes it much easier to cross. It's exceptionally dangerous to cross the street, even for an adult during certain times of the day, but particularly kids when they go to school and when they come home is near rush hour. And our kids are literally scared to cross the street to walk to school. I don't think that's fair. If you're going to fix the road, you should also fix the crosswalks.
And that's a great comment, Dave. And I would put that in your response. You know, if you fill out one of those surveys that are online, there's the online survey where you can put in additional comments, or there's just the regular paper form, and you can send that in. You know, in addition to the replacing kind that you stated you preferred, stating things such as bump outs and rectangular rapid flash beacons, that would be helpful to see that in your comment.
Yes, I will do that. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on, Tessa Marks has a hand up.
Hi, thank you. I have a clarification question and a comment to make. The clarification is I wanted to be sure I understood who pays for the additional costs in several of the alternatives. I thought I heard you say that the only alternative that Shorewood would participate in, need to pay part of, was with respect to a parking lane change. But who would pay for the additional costs in some of the other alternatives?
Correct. Thank you for asking that. With the other options where we listed additional cost above and beyond the base, that would fall into the category of the federal and state funding. So those dollar amounts would be funded 80% by federal funds, 20% by the state of Wisconsin, if it is for those driving lane alternatives at Capitol. The one that does affect Shorewood, Shorewood has a cost share of 15% on parking lanes. So if a parking lane would be widened, there would be additional cost to the village.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. And my comment is with respect to biking lanes, and I know this is probably in direct contrast with the person who spoke earlier about bike lanes, but I do think that dedicated bike lanes are important. I think that I am a cyclist, by the way, and I ride that stretch frequently. And I find that not all drivers are appreciative when you have to pull out from the parking lane into the driving lane because there's a car parked. Not only that, but when you're driving by parked cars, you know, there's a risk of being doored. That is, somebody opens their door because they're just getting in or just getting out of the car. I do think that a dedicated bike lane in each direction would be really important. I'm sensitive to the issue of disturbing trees, and I don't think you need to widen the road necessarily. I like the alternative of a dedicated bike lane in each direction with parking on only one side. So it retains the 44-foot width.
Correct. And so I appreciate that comment and encourage you to send that in to us. Would ask you to think about the Capitol Drive segment. You know, what happens in there. We'd also want your feedback there too.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Lynn has a hand up.
Hi, thank you. I live at 4415 North Lake Drive, and I am in favor of keeping the configuration the same. And I wanted to respond to the last caller and anybody who's interested in having biking lanes. Another alternative would be to reduce the speed limit and put a stop sign in at Kensington and one at Edgewood. That would only inconvenience Shorewood residents with one additional stop, and the passers through would have 2 additional stops. But that would significantly slow down traffic, the speed, because, you know, we had a study where the right lane, when they had no parking between 7 and 9 heading south and between 4 and 6 heading north, the study was that there was a average speed of about 47 miles an hour in the right lane and 38 or 39 in the center lane. My view is we can accomplish the safety if we maintain the same configuration by slowing the speed down. That'll be safer for bikers, safer for pedestrians. So that's my 2 cents. I'm in favor of keeping it the same way, but lowering the speed limit.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any other questions again, for those who joined at 6 o'clock? We went a little long with the first session. We are looking to redo and give the same presentation we gave at 5 o'clock again here shortly. We'll take, if there's one more question.
Aaron, can I read one from the chat quick?
Sure.
Looks like Kathy S. I know she was having an issue with her microphone. I'm not sure if that ever got sorted out, but she says, when will the public be able to see the results of all survey responses and comments of all types? Transparency is critical. We also need to know who will be in the room when it happens, who will be making the final decision. It should be noticed like a public meeting, correct? So the media, village members, etc., can at least watch the decision-making process. So maybe just go over again the project development process. I don't know if Christine wants to answer that or.
Yes, I can answer if I capture all your comments correctly, Lindsay. So like Aaron showed the steps of decision making. I don't know, Aaron, can you bring that slide back up on the screen, please?
Yeah, let me get that going here.
We haven't even started the 6 o'clock.
Yes, for those who are just joining, I'm really sorry. We're running over from the last meeting. So we're on our last question here, and then we will redo the presentation. So thank you for your patience.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. So as you see on the screen here, we are at the step number 4, where we just gathered all the information. We're holding the first public informational meeting so we can share with you the results and the data that we have collected. So the next step is to collect all the feedback from you guys via the survey comments we are getting today and maybe others later on, in addition to the village board preference. So we'll sit down together internally at DOT along with our design team from Kapoor, and we'll collect all of this. We'll put them in a correct concept, and then we'll come up and propose the preferred alternative to the public.
Christine, this is Trustee Backhurst again. I'm just hoping we could have another stutter step in there where we have another meeting with the Village Board of Trustees, the village staff, and you guys, because we are being boxed out of this. We're not even included in this. I know I mentioned this twice. And any of the new callers should know that we all voted 7-0 to go with the replace in kind. Doesn't mean that we don't want to hear feedback from the public. But I think that's an important step. But I think also your partnership with the village, considering we've had numerous Lake Drive reconstruction meetings over the last 5 years. So this without, I'm not trying to say you're trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes, but I think Kathy brought up some great points. Trustee Silgerbrand, transparency, communication, and letting the public know what has already happened and how we've gotten here to go forward. And as I've heard before, you said these are just perfunctory steps that you need to take in order to ensure that you get the 80-20, what's it called, funding. Now, maybe I'm inaccurate in that whole statement there, but please include us at the table, because we are part of this. So I would hope that you'll redo this slide and put in there somewhere, a joint meeting with the Village Board of Trustees, which will be publicly noticed, and we will get all the information out to the constituency. So thank you.
You're absolutely correct. And as noted, Aaron, if you can just add step after step 5 for us to meet with the Village Board and all the representatives that are
I think that would go after step 4, wouldn't it?
Well, we have to identify, or we have to collect the data in order for us to sit with you and discuss what was found. No?
I mean, we would also need to collect our data, which it says identified preferred alternative. Okay. So you're taking the information from this meeting and people writing in, not knowing the conversations we had or would have in order. I mean, we are again fiduciaries and in the closest to this, but that's okay. I mean, if you want to put us in after that, to me, that seems like a false step. You should put us in after 4, because then the public has yet another opportunity to voice comment, and it's not just given a 1 hour, here are a couple of alternatives without all the nuance. We all know the nuances, because those curb cuts and those curb bump outs cost the taxpayers money, and they're not bad options, but they're not pie in the sky. It's not like you get one or the other. There's always a cost.
You're absolutely correct. So what we can do is we can actually step 5, we can add plus, including the village board and members to be part of that data collection and the decision maker. Would that satisfy the village? Definitely, we want to partner with you.
Okay, should we officially wrap up session 1, Erin, and hit the reset button?
Sorry, Lindsay, I know.
That's okay.
Before we move forward, we'll definitely include the village to be part of that conversation and the collection and sharing data. And then we'll have another public information meeting to share with the public and everyone else involved what the data was collected, what the results of this data, how many percentage was for what alternative. So all these data will be transparent. This is our public records and are very transparent for anyone, anytime to ask to receive them. But we'll definitely revise that step schedule and we'll share with you guys.
And Christine, I have to go on a planning commission meeting. This is Trustee Backhorst again, but Kathy Stokerbrand is supposed to be on both of these and she's having mic issues. So can your team ensure that she is able to get the information to speak, because she has the information from the village and would like to relay that to the second group that wasn't available for the first?
Yep, it was her comment that I just read. I think.
No, I know, but she'd actually like to speak, but I hear you. I'm just asking, you guys are in control of the technical stuff. So if you can ensure that she either has a call-in number or a way for her voice to be heard.
I did send the call-in number to the chat and we have unmuted her. So I think it could be a problem on her end, but we will continue to try. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think I want to thank everyone for joining us. Erin, do you want to make any wrap-up statements before I restart my intro?
Well, I just want to thank everyone for the feedback. That's why we're here. There's multiple alternatives, and you know, we're following the NEPA process and getting feedback on alternatives that meet the purpose and need of the project. And for those who just joined, you'll know more about this in a few minutes. So, Lindsay, kick it off, please.
All right. So thanks everyone who was